Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ambassador Mark Green of the Wilson Center, the Honorable Gustavo Manrique, former Minister of the Republic of Ecuador, and former United States Representative from Florida, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen.
Hello, everyone. So 2024 is the year of elections all around the world. But of course, we all know that elections do not equal democracy. And in many ways, what happens between elections, immediately after elections, will do much, much more than elections themselves to shape our lives and our future. My hope is, with this panel, is just to give you a taste of some of the themes and some of the trends that we're seeing in this very political year in the Americas. I have to my right Gustavo Manrique, who served the Republic of Ecuador as its Minister of Foreign Affairs and Human Mobility, and before that as Minister of Environment, Water, and Ecological Transition. Under his watch, Ecuador significantly boosted its protected marine and terrestrial areas and conducted the largest debt swap for conservation in history. Wow. And then we have, to my left, my friend and former colleague, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, no stranger to any of you. She's received countless awards for her career in public service, from breaking barriers as the first Hispanic woman elected to the state legislature, and then the first to Congress, and then serving as the chairwoman of the House International Relations Committee. She has done it all, and she's seen it all. So, both of you, this is the year of elections, and certainly here in the Americas. And we've seen a lot of political shifts in these last few years. I'll begin with you, Ileana, but then Gustavo invites you to join in. How do you think these recent political shifts in the Western Hemisphere will affect U.S.-Latin America relations?
Well, thank you, Ambassador Green and Gustavo. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen in Concordia, very good to be back home. Miami rules. If you're not a resident yet, we want you to be, so come on down. I think it's a mixed bag, Ambassador. We have seen good things happen, not great things happen. It's a mixed bag here in our country as well. Some good, some bad. But overall, I would say our problem in our community, for example, has been we have a lot of heartbreak. We have a lot of anguish. We live with a nightmare, and that is the cancer in Cuba, and Venezuela, and Nicaragua. And maybe many people right here are feeling that. And we have governments like in Mexico, in Colombia, in Brazil, who are sympathetic to these regimes. And by the way, in these three countries, I have been banned, a badge of honor. Can't go to Cuba, can't go to Venezuela, can't go to Nicaragua.
You can go, but you can't come back.
Oh, yeah, that's probably true. They would love for me to go. Banned in Russia too, but that's another part of the world. And so that's why I say it's a mixed bag. When we have an election, sometimes they go in the right way. And for me, the right way is democracy, the rule of law, respect for institutions, separation of powers. And those are what we don't see in those three countries that are cancerous and the countries that aid them. So I believe in sanctions. I believe in getting tough with these violators. I believe in standing up for what we believe in and taking action based on those values. And we see very little leadership, and I want America to stand tall and enforce what we think is the right way to behave, and not continue to give prizes to those countries that we're hoping and wishing and praying that they'll do the right thing. They won't. They won't do the right thing. So let's hope, let's pray, but let's work and take action. And I think that trade is a big part of that, Mark. I hate to sound like in my days in Congress, but it's true. We had, and Ivan Duque before said it, we had DR-CAFTA. We passed a good trade deal with Colombia. We passed a great trade deal with Chile, and the list goes on and on. And the USMCA under President Trump was the most bipartisan trade agreement ever. So we need to offer countries something. We need to say, we want to be your partners, and here's something that we can work with. So I believe in positive inducement and not just sanctioning.
Gustavo, what do you think about recent political trends and how they're affecting U.S.-Latin America relations?
Sure. Well, first, thanks to all for gathering this. Thanks for Concordia for inviting me. I'm going to be really careful on answering that question. I don't want to get banned from United States. I want to keep having my current visa status.
I thought you were worried about Ileana reaching over and...
No, I hope I get banned from those countries as well, but not from US. As you said, Mark, I was Minister of Foreign Affairs in the last years in Ecuador. Being serious, I'm going to be careful in not mentioning one or each options that US has to elect. Ecuador or Latin America has zero control on that decision. But the decisions or the relation between Latin America and United States and the CARICOM, of course, it has nothing to do if being or Republican or Democratic. You know, it has to be bipartisan, and it has to be with pragmatical relations. And I want to go through 4 specific points that we have to work together. The first one is the expectation in the politics. And I'm going to mention some things in the pragmatic or practical way that our relation has been in the last years. We have to strengthen the relation in the democracy and the governance, of course, combat corruption, increase our judge system, and increase our security system in Ecuador. And I want to point some things that we accomplished in the last 30 months together. We signed the MOU with the United States and the Minister of the Defense Department, which is the MOU for national security in Ecuador. It has more than 169 issues to combat. Someone says it's worth more than $3 billion in international cooperation, specifically from US. We signed the ship rider agreement, you know, for Ecuador to increase our capabilities in terms of ships. It will cost millions of dollars. So we signed something that I like to call it the Uber for ships. So we can call now, remember that 2 decades ago, a president of Ecuador sent back the US Army, the base of US in Ecuador that was helping us to combat narco traffic. And he changed the constitution and said, never again can be an international base to help national security. So we made it that in a way that now they can come in and go out, come in and go out. And we signed that. It's $0. It was a cooperation, a pragmatical cooperation. We signed the air interception, the same by air. And we signed with you, with the United States, the SOFA, which is the status of forces. That's that the Army can go, coordinated by the Army of Ecuador, can go by land. So now we have a very strong relation, sea, air, and land. Then we can fight together narco traffic. That's in terms of the politics, the secureness, and everything regarding that. The other is migratory politics. That's a global issue. And the people migrate because of global climate, because of the lack of water in some places, because of opportunities, the American dream, but it's something we can face it. And we signed in the last 30 months the circular migratory agreement. Now, Ecuadorians can come to states in an ordered way, work for 9 months, and come back again to Ecuador and leave some money there. We signed the reunification of the families. You know, the 4th largest city in Ecuador is New York. That's truth. That's truth. So it's something that we have to face. So something that the politicians typically make a mistake is that we have to work in migratory, we have to work in security, we have to work in environment. So I decided to come here with some practical, true story things that we sign. I don't want to take too long in this, but just a couple of things more. Economic aspects. If this was an engineer gathering, I think we all will agree that typically the solutions for the problems are at the beginning of the chain, not at the end. So having more weapons, regularizing migration, or whatever you sign, it's to combat the end. What we really need is what President Duque was saying. We are one of the few countries in Latin America with no free trade agreement. And the people migrate because of the lack of that.
Let me pick up on that. And there was something, Ileana, that you raised. So, I used to always argue that the vision which the U.S. needs to present to much of the world is that we want to help you go from being aid recipients to partners to, in a perfect world, fellow donors, which requires trade. What will it take to get trade more front and center in U.S. Latin American policies? We're running short on time, but I want to make sure that both of you have a chance to answer that.
Understanding this issue about the problem is at the beginning of the chain.
It's become a dirty word.
Absolutely. Trade. You say that we have an issue of governance, we have an issue of democracy, we have an issue of lack of opportunities, the people migrate. But the U.S. charged 35% of taxes to our tuna, our main income. So we need to, sorry to say it straightforward, but I truly believe that if we really work in a free trade agreement, in this case with Ecuador, but overall it works for all, it will really convey in a more cheapest way, in a more decent way, in a more hope way for the Ecuadorians in terms of Latin American and the Caribbean.
Better than any aid program we could ever come up with.
I
Ileana,
so
your
agree.
thoughts?
Mark, that's an excellent question, and I so agree with Gustavo. And here's an incredible factoid. This year, U.S. trade with Mexico has surpassed U.S. trade with China. Think of how that is going to change the way that we view not just Mexico, but the entire hemisphere. We need to look at trade as something that is beneficial for U.S. jobs and for our neighbors, for hemispheric relations, for stability, for growth. We tend to look at Latin America, especially Central America, through an immigration prism. And that is wrong. That is wrong. First of all, we need the immigration process to work because we need those workers in many sectors of our society. But the fact that U.S. does more trade with Mexico than we do with China, I think that if you were to do, this is a very intellectual audience, but if you were to do a poll elsewhere outside of the Concordia Summit, nobody would believe that would be true. Think of the potential that would have as we establish better relations with our hemispheric neighbors.
Let me ask you this, and then turn it over to Gustavo. So, as I said, trade has gotten a bad rap, become a dirty word. This is an election year here in the U.S. What are the prospects for bringing trade once again to the forefront of policymaking?
I'm very optimistic that it can happen. First, if it is going to be President Trump that's going to be elected again, then I hope he looks at, or his advisors tell him, your USMCA, which was the redone NAFTA, was the most, as I said, the most bipartisan trade agreement ever. And if it's President Biden, I hope that his team will tell him, President Biden, we know that you've had disagreements with this trade agreement or the other one, because he's got a long history and a long record being U.S. Senator and Vice President. However, let's take a look at trade and how it is beneficial for the U.S. worker, for the protection, because that's the prism he looks at. how it protects U.S. jobs, how it builds U.S. jobs. And so either one of them has to see trade as beneficial to the U.S. worker and beneficial to regional stability.
From Latin America's perspective, do you think the prospects for improved trade and trade agreements are possible with the elections approaching in the U.S.?
I'm a pathological optimistic person, so
We won't treat you for that.
yeah, having less than 5 months to finish the past government, I was really trying to sign with U.S. the IDEA Act, which is a condition that the U.S. Gives unilateral, so it's not a free trade agreement where someone gives and the other one takes, and it's a negotiation. This is a unilateral decision for U.S. government for more than 90% of the goods of the Caribbean, the CARICOM, to come to the United States. So I was really working on that, even though I knew that there was just less than 5 months, because someone thought that was a good idea, because we knew that the current president was not signing free trade agreements, but this was an angle, and still the negotiations.
We've got less than 4 minutes. Let me ask you this, each of you. Economic resilience. How can we foster economic resilience in the Americas that can withstand political election day, no matter who wins, that we have those relationships and we have that commerce energized?
I think we have to identify our strengths that we have together. And we share, for example, a lot of values, a lot of things, but there is one that 70% of the biodiversity in the world, it is held by 17 countries. Most of them Latin America, including United States in one of those. So I was proposing create Medina, the mega diverse organization worldwide between these 17 countries, because that's the Pareto law, 80-20. So I think we have to find our synergies, our things together. I believe that, I'm going to talk on behalf of Ecuador, but I think that all of the countries in Latin America can say the same, is that we are as rich as any country rich in the world.
And maybe your work on the debt swap is an example of that.
Of breaking a paradigm.
Yes.
There. You typically take the resource, you explode it, and you get money, you get income from it. In this case, by not exploding, we got $1.6 billion. So I will finish with this phrase that I really believe that any country in Latin America is as rich as any country in the world, with the difference that our biodiversity is our currency. We just know how to, we need to know how to evaluate it.
And I think that, Mark, excellent question, economic resilience. And I think post-COVID, if we can say that we're in a post-COVID time, but the COVID nightmare taught us how vulnerable our supply chains are, and has built up this new feeling that we need to be interdependent. We need to be dependent upon each other and independent at the same time. And I think that we can build these regional blocks so that we have this economic resilience. And we tend to think of the U.S. as a superpower, but that's not going to last very long.
But
and
the
it's
supply
already chipping
chains
away.
help the U.S., but
Yes.
they also build a better, more vibrant private enterprise.
That is it. That is how we need to look at it. It's like a Rubik's Cube. You do it this way and it's not going to work. But when you get that magic combination, you make the magic happen. So I'm optimistic that we can find our way out of this. And the key to it is, as you point out, economic resilience. That's what we must do.
We've got 1 minute left. We have elections in November. Are you bullish on U.S.-Latin American relations or not so bullish? And one reason why, each of you.
Well, unfortunately, we're always so fixated on the Middle East and on Europe and Southeast Asia. We look elsewhere except right here in our own hemisphere. So I'm bullish on whether it's President Biden or President Trump, that they will look at Latin America not as a problem, but as a real possibility for progress and more more working relationships, more stability, more democracy, and more building bridges.
Gustavo, you have the last word.
As the young people said, retweet.
There we go. So we're ending on an optimistic note.
Absolutely.
Thanks to all of you, and the fact that we are here, and the fact that we are talking about Latin America, the Americas, and the relationship of U.S. to the Americas. That's fantastic, a great thing. Thanks to all of you.
Great moderator. Thank you, Mark.